Good morning, everyone. Welcoming everyone, a warm welcome to this wonderful webinar on security trends, emerging technologies that a CISO should adopt in 2021. My name is Vijeta Shastri. I'm the Executive Director of TIE Bangalore. To share more about what to expect today, CISO platform is doing a series of webinars in association with TIE Bangalore and Bharat Innovation Fund. And today our speakers are Anuj Bhansali, Head Secretary of PhonePe, Biju K. CISO of Federal Bank, Balram Choudhary, Head IT of Bank of Baroda Financial, Babitha, the CISO of CSB Bank, Prasanna Lohar, Head Technology of DSB Bank, Bikash Barai, co-founder of FireCompass, and Sanjay Jain, the CEO at CIIE.co and partner at Bharat Fund. Sanjay would be moderating this wonderful session today. He was previously the Chief Product Officer of Aadhar UIDAI program and has been among the key people who have developed the India stack. If you have any questions for the speakers, kindly drop them in the question box of your webinar control panel. The speaker will address them from time to time or at the end of the session. Thank you everyone for joining us. And now, Sanjay, over to you. Thank you. Looking forward.
Thanks, Vijeta. It's great to have this panel here today. We have people from the financial sector well represented. The context to this webinar is that we have seen a lot of breaches and frauds happening in the financial space, and that gets people concerned about their money. And so we thought maybe it was a good time for us to have a conversation among the people who are responsible for security to try and understand where we are going, and perhaps what changes we might want to see, as recommendations that we could make to the regulators, to other people in the industry to improve the situation. So with that, we thought we would sort of set up a conversation, and this is really what has got us here. So I want to actually start the conversation today with basic question in terms of what the people are seeing in terms of the last few years. What has changed? How has the threat landscape changed? And what is the perhaps underlying cause in terms of the own IT systems that are in the banks, etc., that have changed? Perhaps last year you've seen a lot of change due to COVID. People are working from home, so all IT systems have had to deal with that. People have to figure out how to release software while working from home. So all of these have been big changes. There's also the rise in terms of shadow IT and cloud infrastructure. And so I wanted to understand from our panel what they see in terms of what has changed and how that has been affecting them. So perhaps maybe I'll start with Anuj. Starting from the payment side, what are you seeing?
Thanks, Sanjay. So a couple of points wanted to make. So from a security practices perspective, right, we need to understand where do they originate, why do we want to do that. PhonePe has been towards a cloud native from the very start, where we have managed our data centers, where we take security very, very seriously, and both from a consumer data security to the application security to the infrastructure security. If you look at, right, the rules are merging. Earlier, the CISO org, or let's say even the IT org, was a separate org. If you start looking at where even the regulators are coming from, I break it down into three practices. One is towards the cybersecurity, the second is towards the data risk or the data privacy, and the third is towards the fraud and risk. See, eventually at the end of the day, it will either be about a brand reputational risk or a consumer data loss, both of which will result towards somewhere. And why consumers are wary about it is, at the end of the day, you are a fintech entity, and is my money safe with you? So the way I see things is the security is definitely merging towards how would somebody as a threat actor, let's say, steal the data? How would somebody misuse the data and actually cause an individual an harm? If you look at it, I think just today's newspaper itself, it said that the data security is close to 100 billion plus as a problem. I think there was a joint report which got published. Over the last 2 weeks, I have seen certain threat actors selling databases of certain Indian entities. Now, of course, I wasn't able to verify, but on Twitter they were like posted for anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. You could purchase the entire data sets. Even in talks with the law enforcement agencies, when we talk about, it is becoming apparent that anywhere from your e-commerce shipping data to, let's say, what purchases you have made, people are calling, people are spoofing. and it is going towards an individual fraud level. What I still would love to see as where we progress from here is how do we combine all of this towards the fraud and risk approach, right? At the end of the day, for an individual, it is about if my money is at risk, what are you doing towards that, rather than talking about from a pure play IT perspective, what do we need to do? So I eventually see the security trends merging towards an individual risk or a company risk, where it's actually financial integrity itself goes for a toss.
Great. Biju, you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Anuj covered in a very well manner. So basically, when we speak about the banking side, so as we all know, banks are large fiduciaries where we process as well as store large amount of customer data. And this data includes both the personally identifiable information as well as very sensitive information. There are lots of transactions happening, the details about the transactions. So we need to ensure that all of these are secure, the confidentiality and integrity of this is maintained. And when we speak about the threat landscape, so we all know that the threat landscape is constantly changing. But in the last 12 months, the way it has changed, that was much beyond our imagination due to COVID-related issues and the large-scale deployment of work from home or work from anywhere kind of environment. Maybe in the last, now the situation is slowly coming back, but prior to that, 3 to 6 months back, more than 50% of the workforce in most of the companies were basically working from home. So basically the perimeter literally vanished. And as you rightly mentioned, so earlier prior to the pre-COVID eras, where patching tools were considered as a luxury, and in the work from home environment, that was literally a necessity. So in the absence of tools like automated patching and all, and the work from home environment, if it was enabled from the user's devices, the threat due to that is actually beyond imagination. So it was really tough in the last 12 months. A lot of things have changed. So the topmost priority was that ensuring a safe work from home environment, so that basically the confidentiality, integrity, and availability is maintained. So that was a huge task, and luckily across the world and in India also, in the financial sector, luckily there were no breaches like that. All banks, we could say that were successful in ensuring a safe environment for working, enabling working from home, so that it shows reasonable preparedness from the financial institution side.
Great insight there. I think you mentioned an interesting point around automation of tools and so on. And I think we'll cover that as you go through the session. Babitha, you want to add to this one?
Yeah, what Anuj and Biju has told, I would like to add some more points to that, but it is the same what they have told. Like when we talk about the cyber attacks, it was there earlier also, but the only thing is that the number of instances of cyber attacks has increased. And as per the latest statistics, it says that almost 20 seconds, every 20 seconds cyber attack is happening, and which include the spear phishing or a zero-day attack or ransomware or APT kind of attack. These kind of attacks are happening in every 20 seconds. And now what I could see like reason for this, like more of digitalization. We have moved more into the digitalization, and cyber criminals are coming up with more innovative games to which plans to penetrate into the organization, exploiting these vulnerabilities which is in the system. And on another, even we can see that 90% of the cyber attacks are through exploiting the existing vulnerabilities and misconfigurations in the system itself. Now, with work from home and BYOD, which is our new normal, our perimeters also got extended beyond the firewalls, where we lost the visibility of the controls of the assets, which in turn led to shadow IT. So considering all these limitations and organization like us have prepared ourselves with a dedicated VPN, giving necessary security measures to identify the posture of the machine before connecting to the network, two-factor authentication or a geolocation kind of thing. So based on this, now what as a CISO, what we have to do is to frame our security architecture based on the business requirement, and which is a fast-moving thing because now ransomware as a service is also available in the market. And above all, I should also mention the increase in the fraud as Anuj has stated, the increase of fraud in the payment sector because the common man started adapting to these technologies and the lack of awareness in them is being exploited by the cyber fraudsters to breach their account. So ignorance is another thing which I would like to highlight, which has led to the ultimate increase in the cyber fraud.
Thank you for that. I think this is a big addition to the conversation. But I want to bring in Balram as well. And Balram, I think when you're previously discussing it, you're also talking about multi-cloud and how the IT environment there is changing as well. Could you please throw some light on that?
Hey, hi, Sanjay. Good afternoon to all folks. So, I believe, Sanjay, are you able to hear me? And Bikash?
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
please.
so we were discussing earlier, we will discussing in the same way. So, in the Indian context, I will say the tools and technology, security tools, and that vulnerability will, that start gaining the landscape. Threat landscape is changing, and the same way, my technology is changing. There is a need of all the organizations, not for that each and every applications, but few and couple of applications to consume multi-cloud environment. So one cloud will have analytics, another cloud will have AI, ML, and third cloud will do something else. And the same time, we will have some kind of legacy applications which will continue to work from in-house data center. As in when we are going to access, and due to this pandemic environment has taught us how we will ensure that for the organizations, all kind of applications, all kind of infrastructures which is accessible to our employee. At the same time, it's supposed to be in the secure way. So how we can create some kind of orchestrations layer on the multi-cloud environment where we can manage our entire multi-cloud environment channel. At the same time, we should put some kind of CASB approach so that we can safeguard and continuously monitor our infrastructure and application state. Same time, we need to thought and work on that because of due to the pandemic that people are talking about the work from anywhere scenario. So your applications resides in your data center in a cloud no matter, but the same times the employee which is working for the organization need to access those applications from anywhere. So in this scenario, that network infrastructures become a very critical things for the organizations. So there is a time to organizations need to think about to create zero trust network architectures kind of environments so that the employee users can work from anywhere environment, work from home, work from some any third-party locations, and they will be able to access any kind of applications in the secure and tight secure environment. This is what we are thinking people have started doing in the same way, and I will suggest to do this way. So this is what my take on that multi-cloud environment in the safe and secure environment. But again, that one point I will take from Babitha, everything to anything which you are accessing, that's the main problem which is coming into the organizations, the employee awareness training on the security and secure environment, how to access the applications, how to access the file and different things which is available for our employee and customer. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Balram. Wonderful to hear that. That got all of this view in terms of what's happening and how you're dealing with it. Bikash, you come from a different perspective, right? I mean, you come from the security industry, and your view, in terms of how the security industry is gearing up to help all of the financial sector institutions deal with it in terms of automation of threat deployment, red teaming, whatever. Want to throw some light on that?
Sure. So let me do something which I have never done in my life before. Start with a poem. Starting with a
As
poem, huh?
usual,
and
Bikash. As usual, Bikash.
I'm
Go
pretty
ahead.
lousy in kind of reciting a poem, so I'll not try that. I'll just mention about a poem, huh? So I guess most of you guys have read this poem, which is "For Want of a Nail." The shoe was lost, and then for want of a shoe, the horse was lost, and for want of a horse, the general was lost, and for want of a general, the battle was lost, right? So we are in a kind of war, right? And in this war, if I broadly look at it, and my predominantly I spend my time on the other side in terms of the offensive side of stuff and work on how the offensive guys are working. But then I also spend a lot of time with the defense guys as a part of the community, etc. But I'll wear more of my offensive hat and tell you how are the battles getting lost today. And battles are predominantly getting lost today because of two things. One is because of nails and because of nuclear weapons, like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So there are some battles which are getting lost because of a Hiroshima Nagasaki kind of situation, but most of the battles are getting lost because of a nail. Mm. So let me expand that a little bit. And since we kind of do continuous, one of the, as a part of red teaming, we have to do continuous nation state grade reconnaissance. And when we do that, what we see is that there's tremendous amount of this number of what Babitha mentioned, misconfigured assets out there, absolutely out there open databases which are out there open, which are generally systems or assets. Babita mentioned about shadow IT, which are not known to the organizations. A lot of times the breaches look like from outside that XYZ great organization got breached. But behind the scene, once you get into it, you may see that their main application did not get breached. What happened was there was a pre-production system and a database which was not part of the main system. Some developer made it online and that got breached. So most of these battles are getting lost because of these nails. And a lot of times the common people have a misconception that the main e-commerce application is insecure. It's not. I mean, generally those are secure, but there are certain other smaller paths through which somebody is entering. So those are more of those nails. And when we look for nails, the number of nails out there is very huge.
Can everyone who's not speaking go on mute? I think that will help us.
So to give you an idea, the number of such misconfigurations, etc., which are there, I mean, some time back we saw that there are almost 500,000 open databases out there. The number of open RDP ports which has got the company name 123 as passwords is very huge. Number of cases where users reuse the same account password and same username password reuse, and those passwords being available in the dark web is very common. So what I mean to say is there are a lot of those low hanging fruits or those nails because of which battles are getting lost. The second type of battle where it is getting lost is like Hiroshima Nagasaki, the thing that happened in case of the solar winds breach, where the attackers actually did a lot of research. They discovered a 0-day, wrote an exploit which is reliable. And by the way, those who have written exploits, you guys know how difficult it is to release safe, not safe, I would say a reliable exploit, which without fail would go and compromise, would work on most of the assets. And these guys did a great job in terms of writing one exploit. And these are the kind of, these are more like the nuclear weapons. And we need two different kind of strategies for these two things. When it comes to nails, these are easier to handle, but we need to be more proactive, look at it in a continuous manner, look at it in a holistic manner. These are easier things to do, but needs to be done in a, just like going to gym every day. I mean, in a way it's very easy, but it's also very hard, right? So but the other thing, those nuclear weapons, you can't do anything about it. So I was talking to one of the guys, this is quite some time back, almost a decade back. He's one of the best guys I have seen when it comes to exploits and hacking. So he mentioned something that getting exploited by a known vulnerability is lame, I mean, that's what hackers use as a word, lame, more often. But getting pawned. So his word was getting pawned by a known vulnerability is lame, but getting pawned by a 0-day is a privilege. So now for him, why is it a privilege? Because I mean, his goal was to catch those 0 days, reverse it, and find out 0 days. So he was like a 0-day hunter, right? And so for him, it's a privilege from two perspectives. One is it's not possible to stop, but second, he also gets to catch. I think so. When it comes to nuclear weapons, which are like the 0 days, our strategy needs to be more of detect, respond, and recover. You can't prevent it. So there's no point in trying to do that. Any vendor who comes and says, I'm going to protect you from all these 0 days, is very hard. I mean, you know, you have to take it with not a pinch of salt, but maybe a bag of salt for a statement like that. So for 0 days, go for detect, respond, and recover. And for nails, go to gym every day. Easier, but very hard. So that's how I would probably summarize. Huh?
Great. Thanks, Bikash. I think this is useful. I think the discipline and hygiene are very important, as you highlighted, and those are the things that we need to be certainly looking at. But I think when you look at finance as an industry, it's extremely regulated, and in this regard, I mean, we have the regulators coming in talking about the kind of things they expect from the regulated entities, because RBI put out a master circular on the security framework. And then we have a recent directive around payment security. And so, I just want to sort of see how that is playing out today in the industry. And from the industry perspective, is that sufficient? Do we need to do more? What are the kind of recommendations we should sort of take back to the regulator on this? And Babitha, perhaps you could start with you.
Yes, Sanjay, as I said, cyber actors are innovating new security risk by introducing different new malwares, trojans, ransomwares, and all. And even if in this current last 1 year, we have seen that there is a increase of the threat to more than 40%. In such scenario, we should be aware of the current as well as the future aspects of the cybersecurity, and we have to protect our systems from these emerging threats. Foreseeing this only, regulators have developed the security standards to enable organizations to harden their security posture. And as far as our banks are concerned, this RBI, their regulatory compliance is actually helping the CISOs to improve the security posture of the organization. If you see, till RBI comes with the cybersecurity framework in 2016, BFSI was not even focused on the security aspects of the bank, and there were no CISOs also, or a separate security team. Now, because of this framework which has been introduced, I think the banking sector or BFSI sector in India is much ahead when compared to the security posture of them, are much ahead when compared to other part of the world. And now the top management and board is involving into the security aspects, because and they want to ensure that the security of the bank is taken care. And yeah, of course, there will be challenges when we come across with complying to the what regulatory says. Like there might be, we have to invest more on the security. There will be timelines which is mentioned by the regulatories, which we have to keep it up with. And at times I feel like vendors are also taking advantage of these security tools when it comes to the pricing and all those aspects. And the other part of it is like this regulatory guidelines is just a guidelines to us. How to follow it, it depends upon the knowledge of the security people who are working at the ground level to implement it. So if we can get a more defined baselines, how we have to come up with this security tools or security measures, what we are putting in place, I think it will add on to the current security pattern, because anyway, we are working on it. It is not like it is always, it is an advantage that RBI and regulators are very much keen to put the security controls in place. If they can give a more streamlined guidelines, how we have to implement it, it could have been more advantageous to us.
No, great. No, thanks. I think the requirement for more clarity is what you're highlighting, and that's something we should take a note of. And Anuj, I think I wanted to talk to you as well, because in terms of payments, again, I think we are seeing a new sort of payment security thing that came out a couple of weeks ago. So again, your views on that?
Sure. See, from a regulator viewpoint, so I have both pros and cons. What I love, especially for an RBI, is they are very proactive. They do release guidelines, and I think they are guiding principles on what and how you should structure around, and gives you a basic common minimum framework for all companies, all entities to actually comply to. Going from there, there are like two things which I think we need to have a little bit more in-depth discussions around with both regulators as well as the industry around. One is most of these times it ends up becoming a very pedantic approach in terms of that checklist 1, 2, 3. And while your actual security posture could have been better, maybe better, but it is about that, have I complied to this checklist? So that bare minimum actually becomes the guiding principle that this is what I need to do. There we need to figure out how, because at the end of the day, every organization will have to define what is the security structure they want to adopt. How should they safeguard? So I can have like 6 layers of security already inbuilt, which could be a frictionless authentication mechanism because I am doing a continuous monitoring of every system, subsystem that is interacting with. But maybe that is not even defined in the guidelines as such. Secondly, coming to the approach on the guidelines, the other thing which I feel is missing right now, if you look at even the digital payment security controls or the PA guidelines that have recently been there, out of 72 odd points, I think 36 are focused towards InfoSec, AppSec, and your education plus infra related issues. The remain, so which is close to 50 to 60%, remaining are related to operational risk or even education related points. But what they do not end up answering is if somebody actually takes a hit because of it, right? What should be our posture across as an industry network, right? If let's say as a layman I lose my money around, how do I get that? So those are left as that you should be doing, or you I think they have to be pivoted towards you have to be doing these kind of things so that you inform, let's say, your counterparty, you basically the counterparty, let's say, stops the funds from moving out. Those are some things I think which need to definitely come up. So that is where I think we need to change. Second aspect of the same thing is with regards to the common guidelines. I think while you have the InfoSec, AppSec process and policies defined, a lot of it's still open, right? At the end of the day, get a certain impanel vendor, you get these things done. To what level of depth, right? That is always a question mark. That is always a subjective call. That's not an objective call. While I understand that from a regulatory viewpoint, that becomes very, very difficult to give a prescriptive guidelines out. But we definitely need to understand that cyber threats are also evolving. It is not that only these things are to be done, or if we follow this, I might have a different way of preventing it. To give you an example, right? While clause X might say do X, Y, and Z, or maybe even your merchants need to be a PADSS, but I never allow, let's say, a card storage. I put a container out in which basically the merchant gets nothing, right? At the end of the day for a card processing of a transaction. Now, in that case, it becomes more of an overhead to get a compliance from, let's say, the sub merchants and all of the other merchants. I think that is where we need to have a better dialogue around on how should we tackle this.
Great. So I think Balram also wanted to bring you into this conversation, and in terms of how I think we are seeing this change in terms of both the regulator and where you would like to see it go.
Okay, Sanjay, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So both thing goes in hand to hand, Sanjay. This is not something that is what regulator is saying, and this is not something as the organizations what I supposed to do. But there is a vital need of between that all regulatory, be it RBI, SEBI, or some mutual fund regulator, and between organization, there supposed to be some layers supposed to be created. So in Indian context, that I think that organizations work in the fear of regulatory. If I am not going to put these tools and technology, if I am not going to comply with the RBI, RBI, they will charge me. So it's not that what is the that health system of our information security tools and technology in the organization. If I recollect, in 2016-17, there was the 3.2 million debit card that debit card has been stolen in 2016. Till 2016-17 and 18, what was the big reason? In all ATM machines, be it any bank, most of, I think, 80-85% of the ATM machines were using Windows XP, and that one malware has been injected, and those injections has come true, and they have stolen so many data. The question is coming for the practice, not for the regulator, for the that if I am working in a bank and financial organizations, we should be taking care all kind of vector from where the threat may land. Altogether, we will not be able to provide 100% security to everybody and everywhere in every organization. It's not feasible. But we will have some kinds of tools and technology in my organizations to prevent all layer, be it perimeter, be it some that intranet layer, be it patching, be it that EDR, MDR, SOC 2.0, PIM, PAM, everything which is available there. Still, I believe that in each and every organization, education's awareness about the security, information security awareness about how to be, if I am a developer and if I am an administrator of the system where we are going to do work on day and day basis. So what kind of, that access metrics we are having and how we should be accessing those applications. Same to, that end user or employee who is accessing our application, how they are accessing and how we are ensuring that as and when they are going to access some kind of application, they are secure and they are not going to anything. So I believe most of the places regulatory, but in organization still in Indian context, I see it's a fear driven by the regulatory, so that if I am not going to implement something, but they are supposed to be this is responsibility of the organizations. It's the high time to think himself and provide to safeguard the that customer information along with the data which is available in our environment. So this is the practice and discipline we need to carry.
No, great. Thank you on that, Balram. So Bikash, again, coming back to you, and again, from your perspective, like RBI, I think recently spoke about red teaming. And so this is where you bring the offensive side into play as a defensive measure, right? So perhaps, you might want to throw some light on that.
Sure. So, see, on the regulator side, it's a very difficult thing. I'll also come to the red teaming. So I remember I saw this post, I think somewhere on Facebook or something like that. So this guy went to his doctor, and his doctor asked that, do you exercise? And he says, yes. So then the doctor again asked the next probing question, when did you last exercise? So 6 months back. So the doctor then becomes more prescriptive and says that you have to go
Very good. Fantastic.
you have to you have to be on the treadmill every day, at least for 40 minutes. So then this guy posts this picture of him sleeping on the treadmill and he says, I am on the treadmill for 40 minutes every day. So now, I mean, whatever you do as a regulator, and there will always be a way to come out of it, right? So the day the change is going to happen, when the person thinks that, yes, I need to change, right? And it's a business decision, and this change is not going to happen just because of the CISO or because of the security team. It has to start from the top, right? When the business thinks this is must, and when the business sees that if I don't secure, there's another competition who is going to take away business from us, or if there is a reputation loss, I'm going to lose market share. And that is happening in India, right? Because there is a strong market driver which is forcing us now to also invest in security. So I think market is going to be one of the drivers. Regulator is also going to be another driver, because RBI is kind of putting in bringing those regulations, making the board members responsible for it. I think adding some considerable amount of fine, like what GDPR guys did, is another thing which is helpful. I know nobody wants that somebody to be the dad and come and say you will be punished, but sometimes these forces help. I mean, either the market or regulators, but then being prescriptive is very helpful, as you all mentioned, but there will always be some ways to come out of it, like what this smart guy did. right? So for our own good, it's very important to have that hygiene, more like going to gym every day from real perspective. So doing this security from the true perspective and not just from the regulation perspective. I think that is very, very important, and a lot of times we miss out that as a big picture. And like, for example, testing. I mean, doing testing once a year or 4 times a year is like brushing 4 times a year. I mean, but that's what we do. I mean, as an industry, we do red team once a year, pen test 4 times a year. That really doesn't help much. So for our own good, we need to move to continuous testing, because our adversary is doing continuous attacks, right? So moving to something like continuous testing for our own good, whether the regulator tells it or not, is very important. But the second thing, which is a big problem, is that if you do continuous testing, you will be completely inundated with so many issues and so many vulnerabilities that you will not know what to act on, right? It is like I'm having so many problems that I just decide, no, I'm not going to have any medicine. Now, how do we go about that? So there's an interesting movement which is happening in the industry, which is on risk-based vulnerability management, which is not finding out how many shoes have a lost nail, but finding out how many of generals, say horses, have a horseshoe which has a missing nail. So that as a context is very important. Or is that general actually going to the battle today or not? So finding this risk in a contextual basis, which now people are calling it risk-based vulnerability management. Now, risk-based vulnerability management is there for a very, very long time, but how do we do it at a scale is the problem. As a concept, everybody knows that concept, but applying it is very hard. But now what has happened is that technology today is enabling or helping people to adopt such kind of risk-based vulnerability management at scale, continuous testing at a scale. So to summarize, what I would like to say is, yes, I mean, the regulators are playing a very important role, but regulators alone can't solve our pain point. I think it is the business drivers plus regulators also coming up with some of these fines, and like what Singapore is a fine city, right? I mean, and it helped them. So making it a fine city, that could help. The business drivers are going to make things happen, and eventually it's all in our hands, and businesses have to get into that direction with continuous hygiene, continuous testing, risk-based view of security. So that's how I would probably summarize.
Great. No, thanks, Bikash, for that. I think that's a great summary, and it actually brings me right on to my next question as well. I mean, all of you are CISOs in the room, and your lives are very busy. There's all of these threats, and so there really comes a good question in terms of what are you looking at to do from your vendors, what kind of support you need, and also perhaps looking at the time as well. Or maybe this is also a great time for us to hear what kind of priorities you've set for yourself in the coming year. And I'll just take one pass around the room, and then we'll see if there are any questions from the audience as well. So, maybe this time we'll start from Balram. So Balram, your thoughts in terms of how, as a CISO, you're looking to get support from people to do more of what you want to do. How do you prioritize them, and so on? What's your wish list for this year?
So I work for credit card industry. As my organization's name is Box Financial Solutions Limited. We are the 100% subsidiary of Bank of Baroda, and we are the payment card industry. As a vertical wise, we are having two business lump sum. One is merchant management system, and main business is credit card. So yes, we have done some kind of digital disruptions in this.
Balram, I think we lost you. Balram, I can't hear you at all. Maybe we'll wait. We'll go on to Biju. Perhaps you could take it on from here, and wait for Balram to come back.
Yes, Sanjay. So like Bikash earlier mentioned in the right way, and all other panelists also mentioned about the guidelines, periodic guidelines that are published by the Reserve Bank of India. So in fact, if you look at
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. I think.
No, please proceed. Please proceed. Then I'll speak. I think
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got
sure.
muted.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Great.
like we all know, no, the Reserve Bank of India has been continuously on a periodic basis since 2011 when the Gopalakrishna Committee guidelines were published. And these periodic guidelines in 2011 in the form of Gopalakrishna Committee guidelines, then thereafter the cybersecurity framework, the major one, and now in 2021 the digital payment security controls. So basically these guidelines on a regular basis has helped the financial industry to be ahead, much ahead when we talk about cybersecurity. And this, like the Bikash earlier mentioned, these periodic guidelines and the priority given by Reserve Bank of India in ensuring compliance has also ensured that the top management is very keen into this. Now, if you take any financial industry, the top management is fully aware. All the board members are fully aware of the cybersecurity related risk. The other kind of risk like reputational issues which can come out of an incident are fully aware. And there's not, I'm sure that no, there will not be any board which where cybersecurity is not a discussion point in nowadays in any financial industry. So the periodic guidelines has greatly helped. So having said that, no, some like as you mentioned earlier, some more guidelines from Reserve Bank of India which can help in more implementation is like no, the control while like new guideline is published. So what exactly is the control objective of that? Or like some more implementation guidelines can be attached when a new security requirement or a new security framework is published. So that can uh, uh, help the institutions to correctly align with what exactly is the regulator intending when they publish a guideline. So that will be, I think, in my opinion, that will help to avoid subjectivity in implementation. Now, like Babitha earlier mentioned, each CISO or each institution or each security group can have their own views. The interpretation can change. So having some more clarity on what exactly is the objective of the control and what is the some more insights into the implementation guidelines can uh, bring in more clarity. So that will help institutions to more align with the guidelines and also reduce the possibility for having comments, that is audit comments when either the regulator themselves are auditing or when we conduct an external audit. So like financial institutions regularly conduct audit, not only like Vikas mentioned, the kind of red team or vulnerability analysis, we also conduct periodic the audits at the third level to ensure that no compliance is really achieved. So that's my point.
Great. Thanks. Balram, you were cut off last time. Great. We get to get your views as well.
So I'm sorry, Sanjay. Now you are able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So I believe that in each and every organizations, I believe, that I belongs to, the BFSI, and as a business verticals, we are in credit card industry. It's very regulated by, again, regulatory and RBI. So, as a vendor, as a partner, we believe that whatever digital transformations is being happens in the organization, what's supposed to be tools and technology requires to be implemented, be it data center or be it end users. So, end users, whatever EDRs nowadays people are accessing EDR, which is that AIML based, and then in privilege identity management, be it SOC 2.0 and blah blah. So, there are tools and technology which requires to develop and implement in the organizations. But the all tools and technology, how to configure, what to use, what not to use, there, that the challenge which we face for the talent challenge which we are facing, the people, someone will know correctly. Otherwise, we need to take help from OEM. On the tools and technology, there are number of tools and technology is coming, whereas that that same kind of things you will find it out in some different OEM. So I will suggest, and I will that request some kind of the OEM and service providers, if it is end user security, be it with the bundle of end user security, be it encryptions, be it data link preventions, be it
Okay. Balram, I think we lost you again.
CASB, no, CASB. I believe that few of the technology which requires to be implemented, like privilege access management, it's a mandatory supposed to be happen. Inspired vulnerability management, automation supposed to be available in every organizations. Manage detections and response and remediations. And the new, that SOC 2.0 who provides supposed to available in each and every organizations. If we are using, that any kind of cloud, we should be having CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker. Same time, we should be having some kind of cloud security posture management tools. And then made big things that for email management, email security, SPR phishing mails, we should be having some kind of email security in the organizations. If you are in the banking industry, we should be taking some kind of dark web monitoring the data, the compromised data, compromised email, compromised credit card details which is available in dark web. How we are going to delete from there. There will be some win-win situations with the hacker or from the organization. Someone will leave, someone will ask for money, but we need to be deleted over there on the regular basis. And we should be having some kind of correct security incident management things. And finally, I will say the risk identification is mandatory in each and every organizations. Always we are in Indian context, and the budget will be a constraint for every organization. We are not going to implement each and everything. Rather, we will define exactly what is the data which is supposed to be safeguarded and what is the risk, how much risk we are going to, that consuming. What is our risk appetite, and accordingly we should be implementing tools and technology. But everything is mandatory. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Balram. Babitha, perhaps I can get your take on this. And it does look like questions are coming in. So I'm going to have Babitha, then Anuj, and then we'll go on to the questions.
Yeah, this when we are considering the priority from my end, I will be more focused on reducing the shadow IT part, because without the visibility, we won't be able to put the controls in place or mitigate the attack vectors. So first point will be the reducing the shadow IT. Then comes the implementation of a SOAR on top of the SIEM to have a better detection in place, and I give more importance to the incident response. How far we are able to identify an incident and mitigate and resume back to normal. That is what at the end of the day it counts. So all employees need to be trained to report the incidents and have a dedicated incident response team and conduct a team exercise to handle the real-time scenarios. And above all, I would say that fine-tuning of the multi-layered security tools, which is already available, by adopting to my tree framework, and have to see whether the attack vectors are able to define all the attack methodologies defined in the MITRE attack framework. If we are able to fine-tune our tools in such a way that we are able to defend all the attack vectors mentioned, I think to a certain extent we will be able to come up with the security posture of the organization.
Anuj.
Yes, so I have three takeaways. The first one is at a policy level, right? We need to change from a policy of checklist towards an end goal driven. What is that? Why are we thinking that we require this? Hey, or this is the key issue that needs to get addressed. How? Let the org decide around on that. That is something at a policy level as an approach would like to see a change. Second is at an ecosystem level, which is, I think we need to be much better at an industry collaboration versus, let's say, a vendor collaboration. Today, a lot of things comes around that we have implemented this from X, Y, and Z, or this is what works. I think we need to move away from that and towards what Bikash was already pointing out, right? It has to be a risk-based approach, right? While a DLP is a DLP is a DLP, at the end of the day, every org will implement it very differently. Every org will require. So, what is the actual risk that we originate from? So, it has to move towards that as a collaboration. Plus, we are not very open, at least in the Indian ecosystem, that data breaches do exist, security incidents do happen. Instead of getting that under hush hush, I think we need to collaborate much better. So at an ecosystem level, we get more empowered to solve for that. Instead of saying that, hey, this happened with X org or Y org. I think because it is us versus them, it is not a company A versus them or a company B versus them. That usually. And my third takeaway is it's a slightly ambitious, which is towards more internal looking at a team level. I would want the team of a, let's say, a InfoSec or a CISO to not even exist. At the end of the day, it should be towards moving towards more automations and continuous monitoring. The respective devs should ideally be empowered so that it gets incorporated at a development life cycle rather than having a separate team. Because the moment you separate it out, it is always about, hey, I did my part, now you go figure and do your part. I think that has to go away because it is a collective responsibility within the org. So I would like to take towards more and more towards automation and continuous monitoring, where the responsibility of fixing it goes back to the individual teams itself, rather than having a separate org or a compliance-driven org for this.
Great. Thanks, guys, for this wonderful
Sanjay,
conversation.
I just wanted to add one
Please.
thing. I know you were not planning to ask me question this time, but so I interact with a lot of global companies, and I just want to highlight two things. That when we look at the RBI compliance, this looks to be more mature than most of the other regulators. This is one observation. Like for example, RBI is one of the very few handful of regulators who mandated red teaming, and not too many guys have done that, which is as one example, or mandating deception and stuff like that. A lot of so it looks like there's a lot of kind of forward thinking there. And secondly, another thing is, if we look at some of the segments within the Indian industry, like the top banks and few others, I think we are no way behind our global peers. This is based on my interaction with many others. So I am actually very hopeful that in a few years down the line, we might like a lot of times people say that India's COVID numbers probably we are very lucky because of heat and this and that and stuff like that. But under the hood, there were a lot of actions also which was taken. I think someday we will probably also see that in the security industry, we will turn out to be very mature, and then there will be a global appreciation for that, something like what happened at India Stack and many other fronts. So I just wanted to highlight that.
No, great. Thanks a lot, Bikash. That actually brings us to the first question. What is the state of automation in payment security right now? Is VAPT still important? So perhaps I'm going to ask Anuj to take this one for payment security.
Sure. So VAPT is definitely an important part. I think so the way we conduct it is in two folds. One is the final application, and then every new product feature that gets released, both the VA and PT gets done for that. The other part is we are moving continuously towards continuous automation, where we are putting a lot of these checks, be it an IDOR check to let's say any of the hard-coded credentials that get directly before you commit. So at the CI/CD pipeline itself, we will basically want that this cannot go ahead. So we are continuously moving towards automation. But yes, at the end of the day, VAPT is actually a very simple way for even a management to understand and take a risk-based call. So it has got less to do on the security posture. I think security postures, we are getting much more automated around on that. But it is to take a final call on, do we think it is a very high risk, even if it's a vulnerability or not.
Great. So the next question I have is, what does the BFSI industry need to do to be able to defend against the cyber odds as the world goes digital? And perhaps, Babitha, I can ask you to step in on this one.
Yeah, when say already we are into digitalization, it is not like when we go for digitalization. Now it is a kind of doorstep banking is already in place, wherein now in this COVID time, now the people need to go to the bank to take money or do some transaction. So in this scenario, as I have mentioned, the many of the frauds has happened due to the lack of awareness in the customers. It is not because something got breached from the bank's end. So it is a customer awareness, and this how they have to use. Even if we educate them by sending SMS to the customers that not to share the credentials, they are doing it, and because of that, people are losing money. That is from the awareness perspective. And from the security perspective, from the BFSI organization perspective, we have a very strong infrastructure, multi-tiered security tools are in place, right from the next-gen firewall, which forms the perimeter, till that internal this endpoints where we have EDR, there's APT and all in place, which guards the endpoint from the even from zero-day attack, and the incident response plans also are in place. So to a certain extent, with the help of the regulatory guidelines, we have prepared ourselves to meet the security or cyber attacks which are in plan. But as I always say, it is security is everyone's responsibility. Everyone in this field have to be aware of it. So it is not only the CISO's role, each one who is participating, right from the customer, employees in the organization, and the security team. It is a teamwork, and it should be part of our lifestyle. It is a health. If we are following, everyone is following the security. That is, I'll be using a password of 14, minimum 14 digit with a alphabet, and numerics, and all those things. If a common man started using this itself, will lead us to a very secured environment. So these are some of the things which I could highlight here.
Okay, great. So the actually questions are coming in quite thick and fast, but we're getting close to the end of time. So I'm going to take one or two last questions here. So let me put both of them together. One is, do CISOs have a clear guidance on how one should operate? And the second one I'm going to take is, in light of the rising frequency of cyber attacks, the RBI circular urges banks to take adequate measures. But what is the question about the human element? How do you eliminate the human element, or take protections against it? And in the panel, I'm going to ask anyone who wants to take both of these pieces to sort of please do so. Any volunteers to the question?
Yeah, again, since it's BFSI, I can answer that. This COVID, one of the positive thing which I can see from COVID is a pandemic, is that people started thinking about the human, backup of human. Till this time, we were coming up with the machines and processes and everything. We see the BCP plan for that. We never thought about a BCP plan of the human or the essential or critical resource who is operating. So now, but in banks, we do have such a infrastructure much earlier itself, wherein people are asked to move out of their place for at least 14 days to see that even without the presence, the things will go on. So it was not a big kind of an issue to us, and immediately we even have adopted to the work from home kind of culture, which was not there earlier. Now we have with the security and technological aspects which is there with us now, we were able to provide a service, and we are happy to say that not even a single day we were given out of the service. We have gone out of the service. So that is a kind of security as well as digitalization which is in our Indian BFSI sector.
Great, thank you. So thanks to a wonderful panel for a great session, and we are pretty much at the end of time. So I'm going to hand it back to Vijeta to take it from here.
Babitha and Bikash, much appreciated. And we would love to take this forward to the next level. As organizations, as a community and ecosystem, there is a lot more that we can contribute. And yes, CISO is, of course, when they say security is so important. And I think in the last 1 year, we have learned that it's a very critical angle that we should never ever compromise on. So definitely we want to do more, and any other support to spread the word and help the so many enterprises, so many startups need to know more about all these things, and you all are the subject matter experts. So to enable this and to help, we will definitely do this. And I'm sure that some of these insights and learnings, we need to also send it out to the rest of the community who could not join. Will help you to facilitate that as well. That's a promise. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you,
thank
everybody.
you, Sanjay, and thank you, everybody. It was a wonderful session, and hope participants are also happy with this.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks, Babitha, Anuj. Thanks, Vijeta. Thanks,
Thank
Balram.
Thank
you.
you all. Thank you all. It was nice interacting with you guys. Thank you.
Thank
you. It
you.
was a great
Thank you.
question.
Bye bye.
Well,
Bye bye.
Bye.